Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel. Time for this week's edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. We'll get a public service announcement from Gerry, and then we'll look at player development, kind of the macro, and then get granular as we go on. But Gerry, before we do anything else, let everybody know why they need to go to Mark Saunders for all of their insurance needs.
Absolutely. A Texas alum, Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. That means he's the only insurance agent you'll need, as Jeff Howe said. Everything from your home, car, boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. A little quick story here. Mark Saunders and his sons were at the third Longhorn on Texas football get-together in Austin last week. Multiple people came up to him. He is doing business with multiple Texas alums that were at that event now. So what does that tell you? Give Texas alum Mark Saunders a call. With over 35 years of experience, you'll be in great hands with Mark Saunders. Again, 512-218-8571. Thanks for the continued support of OTF, Mark Saunders, and family.
All right, Gerry, we got something we're going to nip in the bud right now. It's the first real weekend of college football games.
Yep.
Inevitably, guys committed to Texas are going to show up at other games.
Yes.
Gerry, before everybody freaks out, the floor is yours. What can people make of it if Texas commits show up elsewhere?
Yeah, so this is what I always say about recruiting. And either Derek Cooper or James Johnson or both will show up at the Miami-Notre Dame game in Miami Saturday. If I lived down there and I was a top recruit, I would tell my parents I'm going to the game. Are you going with me or am I going alone? Period. Like, I'm going to college football games if I'm down there. This is no different. C.J. Baxter went to 2 Florida State games when he was committed to Texas senior year. Jarrett Gibson, Myron Charles went to multiple Florida games their senior seasons after they're committed to Texas. Expect more of the same. You know, Auburn, Florida is going to try to get Vodney Cleveland on campus. These teams aren't going to get – these in-state schools aren't going to give up on these guys, else they should be fired. On the flip side, Texas will have guys committed elsewhere at some of their home games later in the year. Some of their marquee games, which will be later in the year. So I just wanted to put that out there. We expect guys to show up places. The Miami-Notre Dame game is a massive draw in South Florida. If you live in South Florida, why would you not go to the game if you got free tickets? I know I would. So I just wanted to put that out there. The big movement, like the Texas staff, not that they're not making their calls, but recruiting's not even really – it's on the back burner this week. This is all about the Ohio State game. What we're monitoring next with the Texas staff from a recruiting standpoint in 26, where do they go on that off week in late September? That's going to tell the story. Do they make a trip out to Honolulu to see Malachi Lee in an off week? That would be very rare. We're monitoring to see if that may happen. Where else does this staff go? You know, they'll head down to South Florida to see their guys, probably Vodney Cleveland, Birmingham. They'll go see their guys. They'll also be seeing guys they want to get on campus later in the year. That's what we're monitoring for 26 recruiting right now, with the understanding Steve Sarkisian and his staff are focused on Columbus, Ohio this week, much more than anything else.
All right. Thank you for that, Gerry. So moving on, I wanted to talk about player development this week because, CJ, we've heard Sark in the last few press conferences he's had when he's been available. He's mentioned guys like Connor Stroh, Xavier Filson, Jordan Johnson-Rebel, Jordan Washington, guys that may have been out of sight, out of mind for a good portion of the fan base. But, CJ, some of these guys we're going to see quite a bit starting on Saturday.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun path to follow for some of these guys who – you know, you see in the high school trails, Gerry, and then you kind of don't hear about them for a year or two, and then sure enough, they pop up on a big Saturday making plays, and you're like, oh, that's who I remember seeing. Now they just look completely different after years of development and weight training, etc. But Saturday is going to be exciting because I know Sark's mentioned anywhere from 25 to 30 guys getting on the field on the defensive side of the ball. That would be significantly more than we've ever seen in a marquee early season matchup, right? Texas normally sits in that 22 to 23 range, dating back to playing in Ann Arbor, dating back to playing in Tuscaloosa. You don't see them expand beyond that, but now they're deeper on that defensive side of the ball. They have more pass rushers than ever. That safety room, deeper than ever. Cornerbacks, more guys itching to get on the field than we've ever seen under Steve Sarkisian and Pete Kwiatkowski. How deep do they go? Well, a lot of those guys that we will see eventually have come from that developmental ranks, and that's what, you know, I'm excited to get into today.
And I'm looking at this, thinking about it. When you look at your kind of maybe your unranked 4 stars, but even like your 3-star prospects, that's kind of how you look at the best franchises in the NFL that build their rosters with day 3 draft picks and undrafted free agents. Now your 3 stars have to hit. And Gerry, I wanted to start this by looking at the class of 2024 and maybe guys that were kind of underappreciated assets for a number of reasons. And right off the rip, when I look at the 5 lowest rated, and I'm using the 24/7 Sports composite for this, when I look at the 5 lowest rated prospects in that class, 2 of the 5 are Parker Livingstone and Alex January, guys that whether they start or not, we're probably going to see them play a lot of meaningful snaps against Ohio State on Saturday and going forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was looking at the same list you were. Alex January is going to start Saturday. And I spoke with somebody really close to him, and they were like, look, if he just continues to develop, keeping his pad level low consistently, he is going to have a big year at Texas. They think he's made big strides. He's gotten stronger along with getting quicker at the same time. Alex January's made huge strides from freshman to sophomore year. Second year working with Kenny Baker, by the way, as well. So he knows Kenny well. Kenny knows him well. If he can consistently keep his pad level down, that is his continue, not struggle, but development piece there, then he's going to have a big year for Texas, rotating with Murad Watson. Parker Livingstone, obviously, if they start in a 3 wide set, he'll be in. If they start in 12 personnel, probably not. But Parker Livingstone, whether he starts or not, is going to play a key role, especially with Emmett Mosley not expected to play. Then that means it's Ryan Wingo and it's DeAndre Moore and it's Parker Livingstone. And those are your guys. And I think he's a really good fit with Arch Manning. But that development year physically to get him ready to go. Look, the speed didn't change with him. His ability to run a good double move and catch the football over his shoulder didn't change. But physically getting strong enough. And a lot of times when people talk about that, they think about playing through contact. But what about being a blocker on the perimeter? What about doing everything you're asked to do as a wide receiver? That strength comes into play. And I'll lead you into it with CJ. This 24 class, has a number of guys. Christian Clark coming off injury. Ty Anthony Smith was a high 3-star player. Jordan Washington. This is one of those classes, and a Daniel Cruz who you'll see start in future years. This class has a number of those guys who are going to play key roles for Texas this year.
I was going to go down that same bottom 5. And I say bottom because it's in quotes, but 4 of those guys we've heard a lot of positives about, Livingstone and January being the 2. But Christian Clark and his recovery, for him as lowly rated as he was, it's kind of surprising. Even coming after or off of an Achilles, he's been one of the talk of the towns in fall camp. Very positive. Gerry, I know that you're high on Nate Kibble. That's another guy in that same breath as a Daniel Cruz, who you may not see immediately this year, but down the road at Texas. And again, that's where you want to see these offensive linemen, right? You don't want to see a freshman starting on the offensive line unless, look, it's a Kelvin Banks. But how often are you going to be seeing a Kelvin Banks step into a world now at Texas and its offensive line and immediately thrust onto the field? It's not going to happen as often as it was back in 2022. Point being, allow these guys to bake a little bit. Allow them to refine their tools and get on the field when they're ready rather than being rushed. And that's really where I look at the 2 of them saying, okay, they're in a very positive path to the field. And ultimately starting rotation is Daniel Cruz, Nate Kibble, 2 guys, again, very lowly rated, but 2 guys that had great traits coming out of high school.
Gerry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but a guy that we were talking about before we hit the record button for this, Zeno Umezulo, that's the guy. That's a guy I'm thinking about when you talk about what CJ just said, guys that you just want to kind of stash away, let him develop. I don't know how much we'll see him against Ohio State. I don't know what his snap numbers are going to look like at the end of the year. But, Gerry, this is a guy that I think we all saw the physical tools, and it seems like every time we get eyes on him, the physical development continues to be there for him.
Yeah, look, he was a guy that was ranked the top 150 prospect in America, but it was not Adwater instant player. It was going to be a developmental curve with him. We heard really good things about his redshirt year. We heard Texas was really excited about him going into the spring. Then he hurt his thumb and missed a lot of time. He's quietly had a really good fall camp. And I do expect we're going to see him some Saturday and more as the season moves along. But speaking with somebody close to him, they think Zena has done a great job taking to Kenny Baker and Alan Clark's coaching. Alan Clark obviously new to the edge room. Kenny Baker had a lot of the pass rush responsibility and coaching on the edges last year. But he's seeing somebody who works with him in the off-season seeing a much more mature Zena in the way he's learning and taking it to the field. And with that physical development, he's one of those guys that was pretty highly rated around the country, but it wasn't going to immediately show. I do think we start to see that this year because when you have a frame that's that long, it's going to take time to add the strength needed and learn how to really use that athleticism and play low when you're 6'5", and it's been so easy for you to stand up and find the ball in high school. You can't stand up to find the ball at this level. So I think he's done a great job in his development there and with his pass rush.
CJ, when we look at the 2025 class, again, we'll see a lot of these guys debut against Ohio State on Saturday. When you start looking at that class again, it was the number one class in the country for a reason, and it's hard to call a top 100 guy an underappreciated asset. I didn't think Grayson Littleton was going to have the kind of impact from day one that he's had. And I think it's safe to say if you see any of these freshmen getting positional snaps in this ball game, just assume the staff thinks they've got a potential 3-and-done guy to the NFL.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially against this Ohio State wide receiving room. If they feel like they can throw him out on the field and not be at a disadvantage, that's the ultimate sign of approval. There is not a bigger test in college football than what Texas will face this upcoming weekend. And look, we didn't see a whole lot of Colin Simmons against Michigan. Only about 18 snaps, right? We only saw about 22 from Anthony Hill against Alabama, and that's in week 2.
Yeah.
So if we're seeing a 20, 25 snap performance from Grayson Littleton on the road against Ohio State, that might be as big a sign of approval and certificate of baller for this Texas staff has given out at any point early on for most of these defensive kids. But that is really impressive. And I kind of look back at late additions in classes, and they're kind of enigmas because you don't get to watch really the development from a junior year to a senior year. You can go back and watch the tape, but ultimately in real time, you see the real life progressions, right? For a lot of Texas fans, for those December editions, you don't see it, right? And it's just, oh, what do we get? It's like a mystery box, if you will. And then you don't really, see the full development over his high school ranks. But when he arrived on campus, I mean, the way that he moves is a little bit different than I think a lot of those defensive backs in that Texas room. And I know I've made the comparison plenty of times, Jeff, but you play Mario Kart, you get the speed boost, and you start going really quick for, about 50 meters. That's how he moves immediately out of his breaks. It's that speed boost. It looks different than other guys, and that's what allowed him to jump the line at that star position. Physicality and that quickness.
By the way, we just came up with one of our next show ideas. Producer Matt needs to put this one, a baller's certificate. That's going to be a show.
Save it.
Yes, save it. And if anybody steals it in the YouTube world, we'll know. Baller's certificate. Texas fans, on the lookout for that show in the future.
I got a feeling we'll stamp some guys as certified ballers coming out of this Ohio State game on Saturday. Gerry, we got a couple more things to hit, but before we do that, one more time, let's give a shout out to Mark Saunders.
A baller certificate here. Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. That means he's the only insurance agent you'll need. Do what a few people at the On Texas Football Third and Longhorn get-together did last week. Let's give Mark Saunders a call. Call that office today, 512-218-8571. He has everything you need from your home, car, boat, to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. He will save you money, and he'll give you a great experience with over 35 years of his experience. That's Texas alum Mark Saunders, 512-218-8571.
Guys, I do want to take a look at the 2026 class, and you guys have free reign to pick anybody you want, but I'll just rattle off the guys that are 3-star prospects and below. This is according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. Kosi Akpala, Chris Stewart, Hayward Howard Jr., Max Wright, Nicholas Robertson, Cohen Brown, Yaheem Riley, and then you've got the 3 specialists. So of that group of guys, CJ, I know you're a big Cohen Brown fan. Gerry, you're going to go see Kosi Akpala play this week.
Yep.
Which of those guys might be out of sight, out of mind on signing day, but we could be talking 18 to 24 months from now that these guys are, if they're not starters, they're considered starters for Sark and company.
Yeah, so I'll start with Kosi Akpala. And look, I don't think his ranking will remain there his senior season. Kosi's a really talented and versatile guy who is a film junkie. He has a lot of those characteristics, and I'm not saying he's going to come in and do what Grayson Littleton is, but that people talk about with Grayson Littleton. Lives in the film room, is a football junkie, wants to understand everything, ask the right questions. That's the way Kosi Okpala is if you talk to his Maid Creek staff. So Kosi Okpala's got all those football qualities about him to go with what you see on tape. Then for me, it's Max Wright and Nicholas Robertson. Nicholas Robertson as guard is a large human that has really good feet. He's got good arm length. I think they're playing Oak Ridge Friday to kick off their season. Watching a year where Nicholas Robertson is very similar to me, like to Nate Kibble, or what people thought about Nate Kibble. I think Nicholas Robertson is an even more athletic version of Nate Kibble. Then Max Wright. Look, there's something about 6'7", 290 with the arm length he has and the strength that he's going to put on that frame. There's something about guys like this to me, and especially in a loaded offensive line class in the state of Texas, where the guys like John Turntine, Felix Ojo, Zayden Crimpin, and all those guys we've talked about more get a lot of the press. It's easy for guys like Max Wright to kind of not get enough attention, but guys with frames like that also have physicality in their nature, then it just comes down to giving them some time to develop. And we've seen what Steve Sarkisian and Kyle Flood do when they have time to develop these guys on the offensive line. So I'm really watching Nicholas Robertson and Max Wright, and I'll let CJ take it away with Cohen Brown and Chris Stewart.
Yeah, let's get into Cohen Brown, because I've been a fan of his for about 2 years now, since seeing him for the first time in Waxahachie. Incredibly underrated, yet when you get the nod of approval from a Lincoln Riley USC offense, that typically means good things. Texas swoops back around, and look, they basically told him, we see you as Matthew Golden 2.0. That was words coming out of the Texas mouth during to Cohen Brown during his Texas official visit in June. And 6 foot, 190 pounds with 10.69 speed, you see the similarities. You see the way that he plays. He plays super physical on the outside as well. He's very competitive. And I've been told a number of times from members of the Waxahachie staff, Gerry, you mentioned film junkie. This guy's a gym junkie. You know, he's in the gym. They have to tell him to go home because he will outwork himself too often, and that ultimately leads to the Waxahachie coaches saying, hey, let's press off the break a little bit. I think he's a great culture fit. I think he's very competitive, and the play on the field certainly lines up with what you expect to see from a Texas wide receiver. And then Chris Stewart, look, again, another one of those forgotten guys. Been in the class for so long. You see kind of other schools starting to recruit him. You see Texas starting to recruit other national wide receivers. You wonder if he stays in the class, and it loses sight of how talented he is as a result. But MVP of one of the big 7-on-7 pylon tournaments earlier in Dallas this off season. He can make guys miss in a phone booth as well. Very electric and dynamic with the ball. But the one guy I'm looking at circle, Gerry, to say maybe in 2 years he competes for an instant starting spot, Yaheem Riley.
Yeah.
Eddie football player, works with BAM Performance, Bernard Blake down here in the Austin area. And he just has a knack for finding the football, whether it's at star, whether it's at safety. This is a guy that makes plays. And now he's going to be around this Texas secondary every single week of the offseason as well, living in the Austin area.
All right, CJ, Gerry, thank you guys for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to Texas alum, All-State agent Mark Saunders for sponsoring this edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, I don't know what you're waiting for. Now is the time, 4 days until kickoff. Get over there right now. Sign up using the promo code OTFOG, and we'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Again, the promo code is OTFOG when you sign up. Don't forget to like this video and make sure you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's on the channel or over on the site, you're not missing anything in the run-up to Texas and Ohio State in just 4 days. For Gerry, for CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.